They saw his hoodie, not his wallet. They called the cops, then his mother showed up. The doors of Stratford Jewelers whispered open as 17-year-old Malik Henderson stepped inside. The scent of polished wood and expensive cologne hung in the air, mingling with the faint hum of conversation. Crystal-clear display cases stretched across the boutique, each filled with rings, watches, and diamond necklaces that sparkled under the soft lighting. He paused just past the entrance, running a hand over his neatly twisted hair. He had never been in a place like this before. The kind of store where people sipped complimentary champagne while picking out gifts that cost more than his first car. But today, he had a reason to be here. His mom's birthday was coming up, and Malik had saved up for months to buy her something special. A gold bracelet. Simple but elegant, just like her. He had already checked online and knew Stratford carried the exact one he wanted. He adjusted his hoodie, making sure it sat right over his jeans, and took a deep breath before heading toward the glass cases. That's when he felt it. A shift. The air inside the store was still the same, but the energy had changed. Malik noticed it in the way the sales associate behind the counter stiffened as he approached. The way her eyes flickered towards someone standing a few feet away, a woman in a beige cashmere coat, her fingers resting lightly on a pearl necklace she had been examining. She wasn't looking at the jewelry anymore. She was looking at him. Margaret Whitmore, a woman who had been shopping at Stratford Jewelers for over a decade. She wasn't the owner, but she carried herself like she was. The kind of person who knew everyone at the country club by name, who had connections and wasn't afraid to remind people of it. And right now, her entire focus was on Malik. Her brows pinched together as her gaze dropped to his sneakers. Her lips pursed as she watched his hands move, as if expecting him to shove something in his pocket. Malik sighed. He had seen this movie before. Different places, same scene. Still, he didn't let it bother him. Not today. He found the bracelet almost immediately, gleaming under the glass just as he had imagined. He leaned down slightly, admiring it, imagining how it would look on his mom's wrist. Then he heard it. A voice, low, whispered, "I don't want to make a scene, but that boy over there, he's been looking around a little too much." Malik's jaw tightened, but he didn't look up. Not yet. As Malik reached out to cradle the bracelet in his hand, a pair of eyes locked onto him with an intensity that made his heart skip a beat. Across the showroom, a distinguished woman in an elegant outfit, Elena Roswell, watched him with a quiet certainty. Her gaze was calculating, filled with a conviction that something wasn't right. Elena wasn't new to this refined environment. Known in Tulsa, Oklahoma, for her unyielding opinions and her long history with Stratford Jewelers, she had grown accustomed to the ritual of scrutinizing every newcomer. As she observed Malik, her mind raced through assumptions she had long held without question. Every move he made, every gesture, seemed to confirm her suspicions. His worn sneakers and casual hoodie clashed sharply with the store's polished aura, and she couldn't help but see him as an anomaly among the perfectly attired clientele. Quietly, she leaned over to the counter where a young manager was assisting another customer. In a low murmur, she said, "I don't mean to intrude, but that young man, he's been lingering too long near the high-end displays. Isn't that odd?" Her tone, measured yet persuasive, carried the weight of years of entitlement and the assurance of someone who believed she knew best. The manager, a composed man named Leonard, who prided himself on his impeccable service, hesitated for a moment. His eyes flickered to Malik, who was still absorbed in the display case. Torn between the desire to maintain the store's welcoming atmosphere and the duty to address Elena's concern, Leonard's face betrayed a momentary conflict. But before he could gather his thoughts, Elena's whisper became a quiet command. "Please, Leonard, make sure everything is in order. I'd hate for something to go amiss." Leonard nodded politely, his gaze fixed on Malik as if to confirm every unspoken suspicion. He moved closer to the young man, his footsteps measured and deliberate. Malik, unaware of the brewing storm, continued his careful inspection of the bracelet. Every gleam of the diamond reminded him of the promise he made to his mother, a promise of love and gratitude. But the undercurrent of tension was palpable. Leonard's eyes narrowed slightly as he examined Malik's ID badge tucked in his pocket, a badge that spoke of hope and dreams rather than of any wrongdoing. Yet, in that polished world of glittering jewels and reserved smiles, his presence seemed to unsettle the established order. Around them, Other customers began to notice the discreet exchange between Elena and Leonard. Whispers fluttered through the room like silent ripples in an otherwise calm pond. The elegance of the boutique was momentarily overshadowed by the human drama unfolding in its midst. Malik felt the shift, too. The once comforting glow of the chandeliers now cast longer shadows over the polished floors. He sensed every pair of eyes tracking his movements, every subtle nod of disapproval. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight of an inexplicable injustice. Yet he clutched the bracelet box tightly, determined to honor the promise made to his mother, a promise of respect, regardless of appearances or assumptions. In that moment, the space between judgment and fairness grew ever thinner, and Malik felt an unexpected surge of resolve. Leonard approached him, his tone neutral yet laced with authority. "Young man," he said, "could you please step over here for a moment?" His words carried no malice, yet the implication of the request hung in the air like a storm cloud. Malik's pulse quickened, but he nodded silently, stepping away from the case and toward a fate he hadn't anticipated. But just as the tension reached a simmer, the atmosphere in the store began to shift once more. Malik kept his face neutral as he followed Leonard toward the back of the store, but inside, his patience was thinning. He had seen this before, too many times. The quiet assumptions, the hushed whispers, the moment when curiosity turned into scrutiny. Leonard stopped near a side counter, away from the main showroom. "I just need to ask you a few questions," he said, forcing a polite smile. Malik folded his arms. "About what?" Leonard hesitated. His eyes flickered toward Elena, who was pretending to admire a display of emerald rings, but was clearly eavesdropping. "A customer voiced a concern," Leonard continued. "We just need to make sure everything is in order." Malik exhaled sharply through his nose. "A concern? I've been in here for less than 10 minutes. What kind of concern?" Before Leonard could answer, the door chimed. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside. The shift in the room was immediate. Conversations trailed off. Customers looked up from their selections. Even the sales associates stiffened. Malik's stomach dropped. Leonard straightened, relief flashing in his eyes, as if the problem had already solved itself. He gestured toward Malik. "That's him." One of the officers, a stocky man with graying hair, scanned the room before walking toward them. His partner, younger, sharper, followed closely behind. "Sir, we got a call about a possible suspicious individual in the store," the older officer said, his voice calm but firm. "Do you have any ID on you?" Malik's fingers twitched. His wallet was in his back pocket, but something inside him resisted reaching for it. He had seen too many viral videos of situations like this going wrong, too many stories where the wrong move turned into a nightmare. Leonard cleared his throat. "I don't want to cause any trouble, officers, but we just need to verify that everything is okay here." Malik scoffed. "Verify what? That I'm a paying customer?" The younger officer sighed, shifting his stance. "Look, son, we just need to confirm a few details." Malik clenched his jaw. Son, he hated that. A hush had fallen over the boutique. Eyes burned into his back. Even the customers who weren't sure what was happening could sense that something about this moment wasn't right. He could hear the doubt in the officers' voices, like they weren't even sure why they were here. But that didn't matter, did it? They had been called, and now they were going to follow through. The older officer adjusted his belt. "So, do you have ID?" Malik inhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. His mother's voice echoed in his head. "Stay cool, don't give them a reason." He pulled out his wallet and handed over his driver's license. The officer studied it, flipping it over as if he expected it to say fraudulent in fine print. The younger cop frowned. "You live in Midtown?" Malik's brow furrowed. "Yeah, that a problem?" The officers exchanged a glance. Leonard cleared his throat again. "I just wanted to make sure everything was in order," he repeated, shifting uncomfortably under the growing tension. Malik exhaled through his nose. His patience had officially run out. He reached into his pocket again. This time, it wasn't for his wallet. He pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and tapped a contact without hesitation. The line rang twice before a voice answered. "Hey, Ma." A pause, then a shift in her tone. "What's wrong?" Malik didn't take his eyes off the officers. "I need you to come down to Stratford Jewelers, now." Silence. Then her voice, measured but sharp. "I'm on my way." Malik put the phone back in his pocket and crossed his arms. The officers glanced at each other again. Leonard looked confused. Elena had gone completely still. And Malik? He was done explaining himself, but the story was far from over. Time moved differently now, slower, sharper. Every sound in the store seemed amplified, the hushed whispers of customers, the soft clinking of jewelry being placed back in display cases, the steady hum of tension in the air. Malik stood his ground. He had done nothing wrong. And yet, here he was, surrounded by strangers, waiting to see how this would unfold. The older officer, still holding Malik's ID, shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He seemed less sure of himself now. Maybe he had expected resistance, or panic. Maybe he had thought Malik would try to talk his way out of it. But Malik didn't have anything to prove. Elena Roswell, who had started this entire mess, suddenly found a reason to check her watch. Leonard, the store manager, cleared his throat again, his nervous energy betraying the calm front he was trying to maintain. The younger officer spoke first. "Who did you just call?" Malik didn't break eye contact. "My mother." Something about the way he said it made the older officer hesitate. There was no fear in his voice, no desperation, just certainty. The store had turned into a stage, and every customer, every employee, was part of the silent audience. The officer handed Malik his ID back. "Look, we're just here responding to a call. If this is a misunderstanding, let's clear it up. Do you have proof that you're here to shop?" Malik let out a short laugh, humorless, sharp. "You want proof that I came to buy something? Should I show you the cash in my wallet? Or should I just walk around with my receipt before I even get to the register?" The younger officer tensed. "That's not what we're saying." "Oh, really?" Malik's voice was steady, but his frustration was bleeding through now. "Because it feels like that's exactly what you're saying." Leonard stepped in. "No one's accusing you of anything, son. We just—" "Don't call me son." The words sliced through the air, stopping Leonard mid-sentence. The older officer sighed, rubbing his temple. This wasn't going the way they had expected. And then, the glass doors of Stratford Jewelers swung open with force. The sound of heels on marble echoed through the space, crisp and deliberate. Customers turned, instinctively moving out of the way. A woman in a tailored navy suit strode inside, her presence cutting through the room like a blade. She was composed, controlled, but the fire in her eyes was impossible to ignore. Special Agent in Charge Denise Henderson, Malik's mother, and the head of the FBI field office for the region. Elena Roswell's face drained of color. Leonard took a half step back. The officers straightened on instinct, suddenly hyper-aware of who had just entered the room. Malik's shoulders finally relaxed. Denise's gaze flickered over the scene in an instant. The officers, the store manager, the woman in the beige coat. Then, finally, her son. She exhaled slowly. "Would someone like to explain to me," she said, voice smooth but razor sharp, "why my son is being treated like a suspect in a store where he came to make a purchase?" Silence. The younger officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we were called—" Denise cut him off. "I know exactly why you were called." She turned her attention to Leonard. "Who made the complaint?" The store manager stammered, his composure cracking. "A customer raised a concern, and I—" Denise didn't blink. "Who?" Leonard hesitated, and then slowly, all eyes turned to Elena. Elena looked like she wanted to disappear. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Denise stepped closer, her voice still measured, but now carrying the unmistakable weight of authority. "My son doesn't steal," she said. "He doesn't case stores. He doesn't look suspicious just because someone like you decides he does." Elena shrank back. Denise turned to the officers. "Are you detaining him?" The older officer swallowed. "No, ma'am." "Then unless he's under arrest, I suggest you take your concern somewhere else." Another silence. The officers exchanged glances. Then wordlessly they nodded, turned, and walked toward the exit. Denise didn't watch them leave. Her attention was solely on her son. Malik met her gaze, and for the first time since this ordeal began, he let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. But there was still one last thing left to be said. The silence in Stratford Jewelers wasn't just awkward, it was suffocating. The kind of quiet that made every little sound feel too loud. The officers were gone, but the weight of what had just happened lingered in the air, thick and undeniable. Denise exhaled sharply and turned back to Malik. "Are you okay?" Malik gave a small nod. Yeah, I just... He let out a breath, shaking his head. I just wanted to get your birthday gift. Denise's expression softened. She reached out, placed a firm hand on his shoulder. There was something unspoken in her touch, an apology, maybe, for the world being the way it was. She turned back to Leonard, the store manager, who was suddenly looking anywhere but at her. My son had every right to be here, she said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of authority. And yet, instead of treating him like any other customer, you treated him like a problem. Leonard swallowed. Ms. Henderson, Agent Henderson, she corrected. That small adjustment in title made Leonard visibly shrink. Denise continued, You let one person's baseless suspicion turn into a police matter, a call that could have easily gone wrong. Did you even stop to think about that? Leonard fidgeted with the edge of his blazer. I was just trying to be cautious. Denise let out a dry laugh. Cautious? She repeated the word like it tasted bitter in her mouth. Elena, who had been standing frozen near the display cases, suddenly found her voice. Look, I was only looking out for the store. I thought he looked out of place. Malik turned then. For the first time since this started, he really looked at her. The pearl necklace around her throat, the way she clutched her designer purse as if it would protect her. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out. Instead, he asked one simple question. Why? Elena blinked. What? Why did I look out of place? Malik's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. Because I'm young? Because I was by myself? Or because I don't look like the kind of people you expect to shop here? Elena opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Denise took a slow step forward. You don't have to answer, she said, eyes locked onto the woman, because we both know why. Elena's face turned red. She mumbled something about needing to be somewhere and hurried out of the store, her heels clicking against the marble. Leonard cleared his throat, still standing stiffly behind the counter. Agent Henderson, Denise held up a hand. Save it. She turned back to Malik. Did you find what you were looking for? Malik hesitated, glancing toward the glass case. The gold bracelet still sat there, untouched. The reason he had come in the first place felt like a distant memory now. Leonard shifted. I'd be happy to ring that up for you. On the house. Malik's jaw tightened. Denise let out a short breath. No. Leonard blinked. Ma'am, please, I said no. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. You don't get to wash away what happened here with a free gift. My son came in here prepared to pay for what he wanted. He shouldn't have to walk out with anything other than what he chose to buy. Leonard pressed his lips together and gave a small nod. He moved behind the register as Malik finally stepped forward, pulling out his wallet. The transaction was quick, simple, a process that should have never been interrupted in the first place. When Malik took the bag, Denise placed a hand on his back, guiding him toward the exit. But just before they left, she paused and glanced around the store one last time. Every customer, every employee was watching. Let this be a lesson, she said, voice carrying through the space. Pay attention to the way you treat people. You never know who they are or who they belong to. With that, she turned and they walked out together. But the lesson didn't end there. The air outside felt different, lighter, freer, but not for the reason it should have. Malik gripped the small bag in his hand, his mind still replaying everything that had just happened. The judgment, the whispers, the way the officers looked at him like he had something to prove. He had come here for something simple, a bracelet for his mom's birthday, but he was leaving with something else entirely. They reached the parking lot, and Denise stopped, turning to him. You okay? Malik let out a breath. I don't know. She nodded like she understood, because she did. He looked up at her, a thought pressing on his chest. How many times have you had to deal with this? Denise exhaled, eyes scanning the darkening sky. More times than I should have. Malik let that sink in. His mom, one of the most powerful law enforcement officials in the state, had been through this too. The title, the badge, the years of service, none of it shielded her from the same judgment he had just faced. A slow frustration burned in his chest. It's never going to change, is it? Denise studied him for a moment. Then she said, not unless people make it change. Malik clenched his jaw, staring down at the bag in his hands. The gold bracelet inside didn't shine as brightly in his mind anymore. It wasn't just a birthday gift. It was a reminder of everything that had happened here today. Denise watched him, then placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't get to let this break you," she said firmly. "You hear me? You don't." Malik met her eyes. "Then what am I supposed to do?" She gave a small, knowing smile. "You take this moment and you use it. You let people know. You make them see what they don't want to see." He let her words settle in. Because she was right. This wasn't just about him. This was about every person who had ever been watched too closely, questioned too quickly, dismissed too easily. About every person who had ever been told, through words or actions, that they didn't belong in a space they had every right to be in. He inhaled deeply, rolling his shoulders back. "Come on," he said. "Let's go home." Denise smiled, proud. "That's my boy." They got in the car, and as they pulled away from Stratford Jewelers, Malik took one last glance in the rearview mirror. The store, the people inside, it was all still there. The world hadn't changed. But maybe, just maybe, it would. Because the truth had a way of forcing people to see what they'd rather ignore. If this story made you feel something, anger, frustration, or just the need to talk about it, don't let that feeling fade. Share this with someone. Start a conversation. The more we acknowledge these moments, the harder they are to ignore. Because change doesn't happen when we stay quiet. It happens when we make sure the world listens.